Hello. It may be a good morning, a good afternoon, a good evening, a good day, or good night to you all. Thank you for joining us today for the U.S. Department of Energy Geothermal Collegiate Competition. We're providing an orientation webinar for the competition that we have launched for this Spring 2021 competition cycle. Our speakers today include myself, Sarah Farrar, as well as our colleagues Katie Smith from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. We're also very pleased to have with us today Elizabeth Metcalf from the Department of Energy Geothermal Technologies Office. Next slide. So a little bit of housekeeping. Perhaps some of you are new to the Zoom video conference platform. I will note that this webinar is being recorded. We do anticipate making it available by the end of the week. We will be posting it on a link to it on the HeroX platform, which you will hear more about in this presentation today. There are two options for selecting your audio mode. If you will note the mute button or icon in the lower tray of the interface, you may choose to select a speaker for the audio transmission that is the same as your computer system, or if you'd like to switch to phone audio, that option is available for you. To all of our panelists, please remember to mute your audio device when you are not speaking or presenting. To all of our guests and attendees today, if you have a question, and we do encourage your questions, we encourage you to select the chat button at the bottom of the screen and type in your question. Our colleague, Caitlin Dorsey, will be facilitating our questions and will read your questions either during the webinar presentation, or we will have a longer dedicated question and answer session at the conclusion of the presentation today. If you're having any trouble with the webinar and you'd like to speak to a person, you can contact Zoom support at this number provided on this screen. Next slide. So we always have to state a little bit of our authority and administration for our competitions and prize awards. This Geothermal Collegiate competition is being organized by the U.S. Department of Energy, or DOE, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, or NREL, as well as Idaho National Laboratory. NREL is operated by the Alliance for the Sustainable Energy, LLC, and our colleagues at the Idaho National Lab are operated by the Battelle Energy Alliance. Funding for this competition is provided by the DOE Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, specifically through the Geothermal Technologies Office, and the views expressed herein do not necessarily represent the views of DOE or our U.S. government. Next slide. So welcome, and to say a little bit more and share our excitement for your interest in the Geothermal Collegiate competition, I'm honored to introduce Elizabeth Metcalf. She's a physical scientist as part of the Enhanced Geothermal Systems program in the Geothermal Technologies Office of our primary sponsor, the U.S. Department of Energy. Elizabeth?
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Metcalf, and like Sarah said, I'm a physical scientist in the Geothermal Technologies Office. And I'm a lead on the student competition, and I've been involved in the student competition for many years now, and we'll go into a little bit of the history in a second, but I just wanted to, like Sarah said, express my excitement for this year, for this semester's competition. NREL is doing a wonderful job, and I can't wait to see all of the submissions that come out of it. Just going to give you a little overview of the competition. So generally, very broadly speaking, the geothermal student competition this semester is a multidisciplinary student teams will compete for national recognition and cash prizes with creative concepts directly leveraging geothermal energy to heat and cool buildings, campuses, districts, and communities. This is an important priority for the U.S. Department of Energy, the Offices of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, and the Geothermal Technologies Office, because students can gain real-world renewable energy industry experience by designing a use case, performing a resource assessment, and evaluating usage and loads. Next slide. So this is a brief history of the competition. So I'm not going to read read all of this, but I will say, just to give an even higher level of context for you all. So the Geothermal Technologies Office sits within the Offices of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. So we sit on the same level as solar and wind and hydro. And we, as technical officers within those programs, are in charge of sort of stewarding federal dollars and getting it out the door so that other people can do research. But in addition to research, specifically for the Geothermal Technologies Office, we have understood for many years, but it became very vivid when we did our GeoVision roadmap a couple of years ago, that one of the primary barriers to widespread geothermal deployment is stakeholder collaboration. And stakeholder, a very, very important cross-section of the United States stakeholders for geothermal and for anything really. Of course, there are students and young adults, and making sure that they have a representation in how things move forward and how they can participate and spend federal dollars. And, we would also like to help them shape their careers moving forward, because, that's just another area of expertise that we feel, or an area of interest for us, just as, as scientists. So next slide. I have a master's degree in geology. I came to the office about 10 years ago as a contractor, and I converted to be a federal employee about 5 years ago. It was around that time that I became involved in the first iteration of this competition. ORISE, which is the educational arm of Oak Ridge National Laboratory, ran the first couple, and then we moved it over to Idaho National Lab, and then last fall, or preceding last fall in the summer, we moved the competition to NREL. And NREL has a very, very strong background, a deep bench in renewable expertise, geothermal expertise, running student competitions, and they're fantastic to work with. So that's where we are right now. On the right there, this was in a GIS themed competition that we had a couple of years ago. That is one of the winning submissions from the University of Wisconsin Cartography Lab. Beautiful map that I think came in first place for a digital submission. And that was near and dear to my heart, because I am an alum of University of Wisconsin-Madison. If anybody has any questions about career development and things like that, I have an open door policy with any students that want to reach out. So just throw that out there right now. Next slide, please. And this is the Fall 2020 Geothermal Design Challenge winner. So this is the first competition that NREL ran, and the University of North Dakota submitted this infographic. And you can see it cited a lot of data, had a lot of strong design characteristics that allowed it to be announced as the winner. Next slide. And that's it for me. But I would like to say, thank you everybody for joining the call. I think you're going to learn a lot today. It's going to be a very exciting semester. And like I said, if anybody wants to ever reach out to me, please feel free to. Everybody that's a panelist on this call has my contact information, and I'm available to you and happy to help in any way I can. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. So hi, I'm Katie Smith with the National Renewable Energy Lab, and Sarah and I are going to go through the competition for you this morning. So I'm going to start out with eligibility. So for this semester's competition, teams must be composed of 3 or more enrolled students. Enrolled students can be at any accredited collegiate institution. That includes community colleges, four-year universities, postgraduate work, etc. But it does have to be a post-secondary institution. Students must also be taking at least one class and pursuing a degree. However, due to COVID, if you're taking a gap year, if you can provide proof or documentation from your university that you are an enrolled student and you're just taking this year off, you are also eligible to compete. This competition is open to both undergraduate and graduate level students. One key thing to keep in mind is that the because there are cash prizes associated with the competition this semester, the team captain must be a US citizen regardless of the location of your higher education institution. We are strongly recommending that teams are multidisciplinary, comprising of engineering, business finance, communications, geoscience, design, marketing, urban planning, etc., so that your team has a very broad view for all of the requirements underneath of this competition this semester. We do also recommend that you have a faculty advisor or mentor, but that is not required. So, as part of the competition, you and your team will identify a community or campus site for a direct use geothermal energy system. Once that has been identified, you will conduct an initial resource assessment, load and usage determination, and preliminary economic feasibility analysis of that site. You will also develop a community engagement strategy for the local stakeholder audience at your chosen location. So for the site, your site must be in the United States or a US territory. It must consist of one or more commercial or multifamily buildings or an industrial or agricultural process use with property access rights to the geothermal resources. So buildings on your college campus, a local housing network, the town hall in the city that you live in, et cetera. Those are all great options. And again, as Elizabeth covered earlier, stakeholder engagement is very important to DOE and the Geothermal Technologies Office. So as part of this competition, you will need to identify the local stakeholders that are associated with the site that you select. Also, as part of your site selection, you will work with You'll work with real world parameters, including the actual energy load, utility rates, and subsurface data while designing your district use project. Input from your community stakeholders will serve as a real world project constraint and considerations, and the concepts that you develop will provide insights that could inform community stakeholders for future development of direct use geothermal energy resources. So, how to compete? Create your team. So find students that you would like to work with, and you're going to go and sign up on the HeroX website. We'll talk about that in just a minute. So once the team has been created on HeroX, you will start your progress submission. Teams will work towards a progress submission, which is due about halfway through the semester, just so that we can provide feedback and ensure that you're on track. Once you receive that feedback, you will incorporate it into the project that you've been working on, and at the end, you'll submit your final deliverables. Sarah? You're muted.
Thank you, Katie. So again, I'm Sarah Farrar. I'm one of the co-organizers of the Spring 2021 Geothermal Collegiate competition. We're excited to share with you that for this cycle of the competition, we are offering cash prizes for the winners. So there's a tiered structure for first, second, and third place. You can see those prize cash award amounts listed here. We will also give 2 additional honorable mention prizes for 2 different deliverable components where there may be some extra polish or shine. Those teams that are eligible for the honorable mention in the geosciences component or the stakeholder engagement strategy component will be teams other than those recognized in the overall third, second, or first place prizes. So please note, we are trying to be as inclusive as possible, but we do have restrictions on how the prize money can be distributed. So these cash prizes are paid to the individual student who is noted as the team captain for the team in our HeroX platform. Upon Money will be distributed upon receipt of proof of your school enrollment, also an IRS Form W-9, and banking information for electronic funds transfer. The team captain of each team is then responsible for distributing the prize funds to their fellow team members. So there is an honor system here at work, but the team captain does need to go through a vetting process in order to receive the cash prize. We hope that this is straightforward enough to do digitally through our virtual participation in the competition. Next slide. So a review of the timeline. We launched this Spring 2021 Geothermal Collegiate competition with announcements made a few weeks ago. Today, of course, is our informational webinar, and we're delighted to have so many of you joining for this information, and perhaps those of you listening by the recorded webinar as well. There is a progress submission deadline in order to be recognized as a participating and competing team. So by 5 p.m. Eastern Time on March 9th, your progress submission is due. We'll say just a little bit more about what that needs to include, and of course, your ultimate reference are the competition rules that you can find also on the HeroX platform. We will provide some feedback to you on that progress submission, primarily to point out how compatible or compliant you are with the rules requirements, but also to give for all of the competing teams similar hints and tips as part of that guidance to be successful towards submitting the final submission. So May 4th, again at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, is the deadline for that final deliverable package from each of the teams to be eligible to win. About a month later, in early June 2021, we expect to announce those winners and distribute the prizes. Next slide. So just a little bit of the logistical aspects of how to participate. We encourage you to register as a team at your earliest convenience, and you do so on this HeroX competition platform. The URL is provided here. Also, if you search for Geothermal Collegiate Competition HeroX in any web browser, it will pop up at the top of the search engine. Once you are into that HeroX web page, you will click on the button that indicates Solve This Challenge. This indicates your interest in competing, although it is not yet a commitment. We really encourage you to do this, as this HeroX platform is the primary location where we will send out informational notices and, of course, reminders of the upcoming submittal deadlines. So if you don't yet have a HeroX account, you will be prompted to create one. You agree to the terms of use, confirm your email address, and accept an agreement that is specific to this competition or this challenge within HeroX. We hope that you are recruiting fellow student team members, perhaps also a faculty advisor or mentor, and if those names are ready to be identified, if they also have HeroX accounts, then you will indicate that through this HeroX team registration. We would, again, like to remind you that the eligibility requirements do require that there is a U.S. citizen that is in the role of your team captain. Next slide. And please excuse the noise of my furry coworker today. Okay, so a little bit more about this progress submission that is due in about a month on March 9th. Each of you as a competing team must be registered and enter this progress submission, which is again uploaded through the HeroX website. Teams with successful uploads of their progress submissions are considered finalists in the competition and are then eligible to enter the final submission. There are instructions and prompts within the HeroX platform when you're ready to make this progress deliverable package submittal. There are three primary components which your progress deliverable should include to maintain your eligibility as a competing team. The first is to identify the site, as Katie described a few slides back. Also, to give a preliminary resource assessment, and the rules document does provide you guidance of what should be included in that and a number of resources for how to do that. Also, a preliminary stakeholder engagement strategy. So as Elizabeth mentioned, one of the aspects of this competition that we're looking to fulfill is to increase stakeholder engagement and education around the United States for the opportunities available with geothermal direct use applications. So these are the three components of the progress deliverable package that are required and due by 5 p.m. Eastern on March 9th, the details of which you can find described in the rules. Next slide. So upon successful completion of that progress deliverable, you are then eligible to submit your final deliverable package. This due date is at 5 p.m. Eastern on May 4th of this year. There are 5 components required for this deliverable package. A site identification map and narrative. So this is just building additional details upon what you would have already submitted in the progress deliverable. The final resource assessment with your complete analysis. Also a site usage assessment. This is for the energy loads. So there's the geothermal resources that are available for this community or site that you are analyzing, but there's also the energy loads for the site or their energy usage. And part of your analysis will show how the geothermal resources meet or match the needs of the energy usage at the site. Also a preliminary economic feasibility analysis, and then your final stakeholder engagement strategy. So these are the 5 components that are required to be included as part of that final deliverable package due on May 4th. Next slide. Okay, so to continue with describing the competition, including excerpts from the rules, I pass it back to Katie Smith.
Great, thanks so much, Sarah. So for the judging, we will have a qualified panel of 3 to 5 multidisciplinary judges, predominantly from the geothermal industry. They will be subject matter experts spanning the full scope of these projects. So they will score the final entry submissions according to the extent to which the content and formatting requirements are met and their agreement with the judging statements listed in Table 2 of the rules document on HERO-X. The scores are all done on a Likert scale of 1 to 6, from strongly disagree to strongly agree. The judges will evaluate your final deliverable package sections using this scale, and then they will be averaged out. As part of the scoring process, the judges will review the final entry submitted by each team. They will use that Likert score to judge each of these statements of evaluation that are included in the rules document. All statements have equal weight, so it's critical that your team successfully complete every component of your final entry. The scores from individual judges is the summed total of all the scores for each evaluation statement, and then the judges' scores are averaged for a preliminary single score for each submission. This preliminary scoring will yield a preliminary ranking of teams. The judging panel will then convene to review these scores, discuss and agree upon final scores, and recommend the winners of the competition to the Department of Energy's Geothermal Technologies Office. The final scores for each submission will provide the basis for the DOE to determine the winners. The overall first, second, and third place prize will be awarded. And then from the remaining submissions, an honorable mention for a geoscience component and a stakeholder engagement strategy will also be awarded. As Sarah mentioned earlier, teams identified as first, second, and third place winners are not eligible to be considered for all the honorable mention prizes, and the Department of Energy's Geothermal Technologies Office will make the final determination of the winners. So as part of the rules document, we have included an appendix that, or there's actually several appendices that detail some of the educational resources that are available to you that will help you along with this challenge. The first is the GeoVision report, which Elizabeth mentioned earlier. GeoVision was a multi-year process by the Geothermal Technologies Office and the majority of the national labs, summarizing and analyzing and discussing the many opportunities that geothermal energy offers for both the electric and non-electric uses. It highlights the outcomes of the United States could realize from increased geothermal deployment and a range of activities necessary to reach this deployment. This document is available online. There's also a link to it in the rules document. And next, I'm gonna have my colleague John Weirs talk to you about the Geothermal Data Repository, which is another great resource for you for this project.
Thanks, Katie. Hey, yeah, I'm John Weirs at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, and what I'm about to tell you, depending on your idea, may or may not be relevant to your team, but I wanted to make you aware of this resource that exists, as it could be a great opportunity for you. The DOE Geothermal Data Repository is DOE's official data repository for all data generated from DOE geothermal funded research and development activities. And as part of our mission, we want to disseminate the information from these DOE funded activities to the greater scientific community and the general public. When it all comes down to it, at the end of the day, taxpayer money helped fund this research, and so we think it belongs to the taxpayers and everyone should have access to it. The GDR, as we call it, is already home to over 1,200 data sets, over 4,000 resources, and over 42 terabytes of publicly accessible data from 74 different organizations. Lots of different data in there, everything from videos, acoustic files to distributed acoustic sensing files and DAS, seismic graphs, all kinds of fun information, drilling data, and the latest, greatest data from all the research we've been doing at the Department of Energy. It's built on OpenAI's cloud. It's a secure, infinitely scalable architecture, so there's no limit to like size of data or amount of data, and there is a data lake involved. So even if you don't have a supercomputer at home, you can still play with some of our 40 terabyte data sets. And there's more information from that available on the GDR. Not only is it a resource to teams in terms of supplying data, but it's also an opportunity for you to get the word out. Because this collegiate competition is funded by the Department of Energy, you are eligible to submit data to the Geothermal Data Repository. And so if you have any interest in that, you can go to the GDR, click the help link, email our team, or email me directly at john.weirs@nrel.gov. And for those of you on the webinar, I'll post a link real quick to the GDR so you can check it out for yourself. Why you might want to consider putting data from your project up there is that it was built from the ground up to disseminate information. So the GDR is not just a single access point for DOE's geothermal data, but it's also a dissemination platform. Every data submission on the GDR, the metadata is automatically broadcast to all sorts of different sites, including data.gov. It shows up in Google's dataset search, Google Scholar, the DOE Data Explorer. Thomson Reuters even generates a tiny press release for each data set that goes public. So it's an amazing way to quickly reach the entire geothermal scientific community and industry. And single sites in our data sharing network like data.gov have over millions of users visiting them every day, downloading data. So if you're looking for a fantastic way to get the word out about your idea, whether or not you make it to the winner's circle, the GDR is an option open to you. Next slide, please. And that's just one of many ways that you can actually put your data to work for you. So, trying to push the culture here and just present opportunities to people and fight the age-old idea that your data is your private IP and should be kept in a vault, locked in a desk drawer to be forgotten eventually. If you're interested in getting your data out there, engaging the community and putting it to work for you, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to chat with you. Thanks, Katie.
Great, thank you so much, John. So I am going to go over a couple more of the resources that are available that are included in the appendices, and then we will move into our question and answer period. So in addition to the GDR and the GeoVision report, which we've already discussed, there is a program called Georeport, the Geothermal Resource Portfolio Optimization and Reporting Technique System. It's a resource and project assessment tool used to measure the potential and to also guide development for the geothermal sector. This tool was developed at NREL, but is widely used throughout. It is also stored in the OpenAI platform, and so there's additional information there. This link is also available in the appendix of the rules document on HeroX. The last tool that I want to talk to you about is called GeoFires. GeoFires is a free open source geothermal technoeconomics simulator. So since there is an economic assessment portion of this competition, GeoFires is a great way to use to help you with that section. You do have to have Python knowledge to use this tool. So again, there's your multidisciplinary teams, and we will be having a webinar detailing the GeoFires use and platform later in March. So I'm going to go back to Sarah now.
Thank you, Kate. So we'd like to recap the next steps for your participation in the Geothermal Collegiate Competition Spring 2021 edition. If you haven't already, do be recruiting fellow student team members, faculty advisors, or perhaps other members from mentors from your community, from professional societies, or from other resources affiliated with your university. You should register. Sign up for an individual account for each one of the student team members, and then register as a team. And that registration should be done by the designated student team captain. Read the rules. So the Geothermal Collegiate Competition rules is really the seminal reference that explains to you the details of student and team eligibility, the requirements of the competition activities in the form of the progress and final deliverable packages. It explains our judging process and provides just really a rich set of resources to use to guide and inform your efforts throughout your competitive participation. We encourage you to learn using these resources. So as John and Katie mentioned, just a rich set of online resources, data sources in particular for you to be accessing and learning about from the references in particularly in the appendices of the rules. And then get started with your design. Be thinking creatively and innovatively about your solutions for direct use geothermal applications in a particular community or multi-building or agricultural or industrial process application. And be prepared to submit your progress deliverable package by 5 p.m. Eastern on March 9th, so in about a month. Next slide. So that concludes the prepared presentation we had to give you this informational orientation to the geothermal competition. I'm going to turn the presentation over to our colleague, Caitlin Dorsey, who will facilitate the question and answer session of this webinar. I know a number of questions have come into the chat box. If you have additional questions, please do enter them through that chat pane, and we'll just answer them the best we can in the time we have remaining. Caitlin?
Thanks, Sarah. Evan asks, are heat pumps a direct use case? Can we confirm that?
Yes, they are.
And then 2 eligibility questions. Prince Will would like to know, are students eligible to join a team even if they are not a US citizen and not in the USA at the moment?
Sarah, do you want to take that one, or should I?
So there is, thank you, Katie, there is a bit of a needle to thread, if you will, for eligibility. So if you are serving in the role as the student team captain, you must be a U.S. citizen. Your physical location or your university affiliation does not need to be in the U.S. Your university affiliation should be with a collegiate institution that is recognized as accredited. As an officially participating student registered through HeroX, eligible to share in the cash prize award, you should also be a U.S. citizen. If you are a supporting team member with interests in these geothermal direct use applications, but you are not officially recognized as a team member through our HeroX registration platform, then there's more flexibility for your eligibility status. But to recap, to be a team member, a team captain, and an officially recognized team member, you are required to be a U.S. citizen per the eligibility requirements stated in the rule.
And I think this is another question for you, Sarah. Andrew would like to know, do all team members need to be from the same university?
They do not. So that is a great question. We do welcome teams to be multidisciplinary and formed of students. There can be multiple teams from the same university, just as long as the student team members are distinct, or there can be teams made from students from multiple universities or collegiate institutions. So it is one student participant per team, but each team may be formed by students from multiple universities or collegiate institutions.
And Sarah, one more question for you. Is the structure of the deliverable described in further detail in any additional documentation?
So the rules of the Geothermal Collegiate Competition Spring 2021 is where you'll find that information. In the front section of the rules, you will see the judging statements for evaluation that will be applied to each one of the components of the progress deliverable and the final deliverable. Also, the appendices of the rules give more descriptive guidance for informational resources and other things for you to be considering as you are completing those components of both the progress and final deliverable.
I think the next question is for Katie. Nicholas had a question. Is the direct use version of Georeport available yet?
So the current Georeport volumes that are available are the Geological Assessment Tool, the Technical Assessment Tool, and the Socioeconomic Assessment Tool. Our teams are continuing to work on the resource size assessment as well as the direct use tool. However, they are not yet available for use, but the existing tools and protocols that are available can provide some additional information that will help lead your project.
Another question. Andrew is considering a project with an industrial direct use case. Can we elaborate a bit more on what qualifies as direct use for industrial applications?
So I think that direct use for industrial applications is a really broad area. So, you know, it could be anything from, you know, we have a colleague at NREL who did some work on using deep geothermal wells to provide cooling for a factory. So that would be a great example for agricultural uses such as crop drying or greenhouse produce growing, etc. You know, we're happy to answer if you have more specific questions, if yours would be considered appropriate, you can feel free to send us an email at the geo.competition@nrel.gov, or you can post a question on the HeroX site and one of our team members can respond directly to that.
Thanks, Katie. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. This is about the March 9th deliverable, which is like, I guess, the first step towards the submission, right? So in that March 9th deliverable, are we just supposed to talk about the flow of whatever our team like wants to do over the next few months, or should it be like more specific with some modeling intrinsics, or is it just like a broad report which says, hey, like this is what we want to do few months and we provide a timeline?
So the rules document, oh, sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Harish, for your question. So we, as Katie started to say, encourage you to read the rules. So you will see table 2 in the front section of the rules gives the progress submission content, summary, and evaluation statements. So I think trying to get at the intention of your question, the progress submission is kind of the preliminary part of your competition participation and documentation. The final deliverable will build upon that, but there are some very specific content requirements. So it is a kind of a preliminary indication of the work that you will have done to date as a competing team. How in-depth your modeling is, you have some discretion over that as a student team, but you must identify the particular site that you are evaluating for this direct use geothermal application, show your preliminary resource assessment, and also outline your stakeholder engagement strategy, as well as some additional information about your team.
Sarah, one more question for you. If folks have further questions about the deliverables, can they send them to the competition email?
Yes, that's a great prompt. So if you will note on the visual slide we have as part of the webinar, we again have the link or URL here to the Geothermal Collegiate Competition Spring 2021 on the HeroX platform. That's where you will find the challenge guidelines or the competition rules. We also have an email address box set up, geo.competition@nrel.gov, which is monitored by most of the staff that you've met today speaking on the webinar. And we welcome any of your questions through the HeroX platform or to geo.competition@nrel.gov. We're monitoring that email group email box daily, and would be happy to answer more detailed questions in writing through that forum. If we see questions come in from individuals or from individual teams that we think would be beneficial to answer for the full collection of interested teams, we will post some supplemental information as a notification through the HeroX platform, which is another reason why it would be good for each of you as interested individuals and participating students to have a HeroX account registered as part of the competition. Caitlin, you were saying?
I think this is a question for Katie. For the resource assessment, will physical testing of the location be expected?
So for this semester's competition, there is no fieldwork or required fieldwork component. If you have team members who have the ability to do that physical testing, that would be great. It is not required. We are encouraging that you use some of the publicly available data that can be found on the GDR or other areas. You know, Southern Methodist University has some great heat maps of the entire United States that can be used to determine some of the geothermal resources. So no, you don't have to do field work, but if you do, I think it'd be really cool.
Any other questions?
We had a question from Nabil on HeroX mechanics, how joining another team works. So I was curious if the team option pair with another team, or if he has to contact an existing team, how do they find that contact info?
So that's a great question. Once individuals have registered for a HeroX account and have affiliated with the Geothermal Collegiate competition, there is a forum where members can communicate with each other. So that's kind of a built-in structured way of networking with each other. So would encourage exploring that option.
Any other questions? Looks like all questions have been answered.
Great. Thank you, Caitlin. So thank you everyone for joining us today to learn a little bit more about the Spring 2021 Geothermal Collegiate Champion or competition. We do recommend that you go to the HeroX site, read the rules, and we look forward to seeing your progress submissions in early March. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to email us at geo.competition@nrel.gov, or you can post questions directly in the HeroX page for this competition. Thank you so much, everyone.